What's happening, people? I'm DJ Graish. I am a jungle and drum and bass producer from the UK, currently residing in Barcelona. This is part 2 of my How to Make a Liquid Drum and Bass series. In part 1, we basically started a tune and got it to a 4-bar loop stage. And in this section, I am going to be essentially making the arrangement and turning it into a finished tune. So now that we've got our 4-bar loop of drums, bass, and all these different instruments, we're basically going to be using that as our little pool of parts to use for the different sections of the tune. So, you know, we've got the pad, we've got the Rhodes. All of these parts can be used during like a chilled intro, and then it can drop into the drums and bass. So what I like to do is Command and X to cut everything, and I'm going to paste that onto bar 33. So that means that we've got 32 bars before it, which can be our intro. So I think the pad is a good place to start for the intro. And what I usually like to do actually is duplicate the pad channel and have an intro pad. So I'm just going to Command and R and then type intro pad. All right, so we've got intro pad and we've got normal pad. So I'm going to have less filtering on there so that you can really hear the pad during the intro, and then when it drops, it'll like sort of filter down so you don't hear as much of the top end of the pad. And maybe now is a good time for me to add a crash cymbal, which is going to be used in the intro and throughout the tune. So I've got a kit here ready, drum kit, which is from an Ableton Live pack. And I've just highlighted that section there. So Shift, Command and M to create a MIDI clip. There's a crash. There's a crash. Both sound like. And then here. These are the good ones. So how about this? With just the pad, I think it sounds a bit boring, so maybe sample piano should be there too. Note that anytime I'm dragging something from our sort of 4-bar loop over here to the intro, I'm holding down Alt so that it drags and copies it and it doesn't remove it. Actually, this is going to be one of those tunes that starts off with drums and then the drums will disappear and then come back in again. All right, so going to paste the drums here. Alright, so I don't want any sub bass till the drop, so let me just delete that. One thing it's good to do is if you think that the crash is only going to happen once every 8 bars, just make the MIDI clip 8 bars long. And then you can just like copy that clip and you know exactly how long it is till the next crash. All right, so I've duplicated that with Command and D. So now we've got 16 bars. All right, so it's going to loop twice and then Rhodes. My idea is this: drums with these elements, and then it's going to break down to main sample. So another thing that I've been doing recently is to make a bit of a hip-hop intro. So especially with this tune, because that sample came from Instagram from like a hip-hop page. And you might remember the guy that made the sample said, "Who y'all hear on this one?" So obviously it's like a rap beat sample. So let's go through a couple of drum loops from a hip-hop drum library that my friend Bjorn gave me, and shout out Bjorn because these drum loops are ridiculously good for hip-hop. So let's have a listen to some of them. So let me go back into Ableton, and the folder is literally just called drum loops. So I'm going to play the main sample on loop. Then what we can do, play some of these. So the third one, because I basically, you know, this is something that you need to think about as well, that when it comes to the intro, obviously I want to make these drums sound dope, but I don't want them to sound bigger and fatter than the drop. Do you know what I mean? The drop needs to be weighty. The drop needs to be big and bassy. And if these hip hop drums are too big and weighty, then they're going to take away some of the impact. So, with that being said, I think out of the 3 hip hop loops that I chose, the Daz Effects one was sounding dope, but also kind of the thinnest. So it's not going to be stealing the limelight. So I like that now. So I'm going to delete the other hip hop loops that we never used. And then I'm just going to copy and paste this, or duplicate. So Command and D 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And now we have, essentially what we've got now is we've got 16 bars of sparse drum and bass intro, which actually has no bass. And then we've got 16 bars of like chilled hip hop intro, and then it's going to have to do something before that drop. So one thing that I like to do is make a little bit of a sort of a drum fill at the end of each 16 bar drum loop. And one way you can do it is just to use a bit of a breakbeat. Sometimes I use a bit of a breakbeat that's not even in this tune. Sometimes I like to use reversed breaks or slowed down breaks, or you know, just make a little 1 bar drum loop out of some other drums. Whatever you decide to do. It's just you know, if you were a drummer, and usually in the last 1 bar of a 16 bar section, you'll play something different, and then it sort of, and then you hit the crash and go into the next section. So we're basically doing that. So let's go into Ableton, and I'm going to go into my classic breaks folder. So we've got jungle breaks. I mean, there's one that's got basically a built-in fill, so let's use that. Dun 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 dun. Hopefully it's time stretched it properly. All right, let me just listen to this with a bit of a run up. So we'll play it from here. I'm going to put a compressor after the filter. The question is our little funky mule fill going to work on the drop? One way to find out. Let's put it there. I think it sounds all right. One more time. So now that we've got our intro pretty much sorted, I will revisit it later, but just to keep things moving, it's time for me to decide which instruments go in which section. So the main part of this tune after the drop is going to be 64 bars long. So that's 4 times the 16 bars that we've already got there. So it could be strictly drum and bass for 16, and then the next 16 is when some instruments come in. Sometimes I like to do the third 16 where a breakbeat like the Apache break comes in and adds some extra bongos and stuff. So it's kind of fun to mess about with it and just choose what's going to be in each section. So the way I had it running just now was the piano and Rhodes playing during the main section. So let's have a listen. And also on the Crash channel, I'm just going to make another MIDI clip here, but put this a different color. And the reason is because there are 2 crashes here. One of them is PA14 I already used that one. And PA18, I didn't use that one. So it could be that crash on the drop. And then 8 bars into the section, the other crash. Alright, so it's like the drummer is swapping sides. And then at the end of this, it goes into the funky mule. So then, now the decision is, obviously it's just going to loop around, but what instruments are going to be introduced here? It could be the main sample. Right, so let me just duplicate this. That's Command and D. The pad should come in now. We'll try it with the sax. So we're going to just duplicate the sax, so that plays 4 times. We've got the pad. We've got the Rhodes and the piano. Now, I can't actually remember if I explained about the 3 layers of the bass that I've got so far, so I'm just going to talk about them now. So in video 1, you saw me make the sub bass, which was essentially just a simple sine sub that was made in Ableton, right? And I put the auto filter on it, which gave it a bit of a wobble. So I have duplicated that, and what I've put on it is various different types of overdrive, including a saturator, overdrive, the guitar amp. We've got an auto filter. We've got EQ8, which is taking out all of the low end because this is just a duplicated version of the sub, and the sub channel is already taking care of all that low end. So this is just to add some overtones, which I can decide to bring in or take out, you know? So we've got the sub channel, we've got the mid bass channel, and I also have a third channel, which is called acoustic, and it goes like this. So that's basically a sample of an acoustic bass. It's, again, all the low end has been rolled off it, and it has a saturator, which is sort of giving it a little bit of grit. So altogether, the 3 bass layers sound like this. And then if we add the drums, it sounds like this. So one thing I could do is just try it out with that. You see that last bit of the vocal that I made with the little online AI tool? What about if that was in there? So it goes. And it could even have just like one note of the pad. So, for example, I could take away those 2 and just go. And change the, what I like to do is if I make a different version of a MIDI clip, just change the color slightly so that you know that's the different version. All right, so this is the pad. Probably shouldn't be purple because loads of things here are purple, so just make it that color. All right, so it goes little bit of pad, and then the AI separated vocal sample. So essentially what it is this section is just drums and bass, but with some sparse other things added just so it's not as boring. So it goes like this. Maybe this AI vocal should just come once every 2. Alright, then we get the funky mule. And then it goes into all this. And that's not going to be there. And then on section number 3, it's definitely going to go back to the sparse style, but I thought maybe that's when we could actually have the vocal sample. Which, tell me in the comments what you think it says, but I was listening to it before and I think it might say sunny all the time. Sunny all the time. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah. Here's a little isolated version of it so you can hear. All right, let me copy this main sample, paste that there, and the little extra bit can go all 4 times. But there's not going to be much else in. So it's the main sample with the drums and bass. And what about if these notes of the pad carry on all the way through? So at this point, it's basically just a case of listening to the tune a couple of times and then seeing what needs doing. So I've just had a listen all the way through a couple of times. I think that hip hop drum section, I'm going to add an auto filter and just gradually filter it down just before the drop. So I'll do that now. So we're going to start off with it totally open. And by the end, it's going to have filtered down to about maybe there. So let's have a listen. Just gradually, bit by bit, filtering down. Taking that high end off. Bit by bit, coming towards the drop. In fact, I think after that last kick, I might just ditch it. That makes it much better. So it ends on that last kick, and then there's sort of a moment of anticipation, like what's happening, and then Funky Mule little fill comes in. And then you get the full force of the drop. So I'll hit save there. So it's going to be time for me to wrap up the video in just a sec, but before I go, I want to just show you a couple of things that I do to the tune to be able to get it sounding a bit louder. So one of the things that I do is add a clipper to the drums channel. So here is the drums channel, and this is called the K-Clip 0. Now this is a free version of a clipper which is called the K-Clip 3. It's a very popular clipper, but if I show you the drums and where they're hitting up to right now, you can see they're reaching minus 10.5 dB, right? If I turn on this K-clip, now watch the channel. They basically sound exactly the same, but they're hitting at minus 13.8, which has gained us a little bit of headroom. And if I play it with everything else, the tune sounds basically exactly the same as it did, but just with a bit of extra headroom, so that when we go to the pseudo mastering, then it's going to allow us to push it a little bit further. And the last thing I'm going to show you is the ozone maximizer. If I just turn this on, obviously now the tune's going to get a lot louder, but when I'm editing this video, I'm going to turn it down again, so it should sound roughly the same volume. But thank you so much for checking out this video series. I hope you've learned a couple of things. If you did, please drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and if there's anything that you liked or disliked about my techniques of making a tune, feel free to leave a comment. I will read them all, and I might reply to them all as well. So with that being said, thank you again. My name's DJ Graish. I'll see you in the next video.